Okay, so hopefully people can see that now. Just to say, my name is Todd, as Rhiannon said, and I am the head of volunteering at the Oxford University Gardens, Libraries and Museums. And we have about 7 sites. So volunteers help out at all of these different individual organisations, which are largely in the city centre. And so we organise our volunteering using Better Impact. And so we have a recruitment account, which is the one showing now. Taken this photograph today, a screenshot of the numbers in our accounts. But then we also have a different account for each of the different venues. So is this an enterprise piece of software? So everybody registers that wants to volunteer across any of our organisations into our volunteering account, and then when they are taken on for a role at one of the different venues, we put them into that account, which means that they are possibly in lots of different accounts, but it just helps us to organise things. So during the pandemic, we didn't do what we normally do, which is to clean our database. So in normal times, we send an email every year, once a year, to say we are cleaning our database. We need to make sure that we're removing information from people that we are no longer with us. Please reply within the next month. And then if we haven't heard from you, you will be taken, you will be archived, you'll be archived. And then our data retention policy then says that after a year of archiving, they then get removed from the system. So that's how it's done. We didn't do that during the pandemic because we felt that that was a bit of a pressure and unfair on lots of people that were unable to volunteer. And so we didn't really want to send out any "you're not volunteering" type messages to people that would like to volunteer, but actually can't because we'd stopped a lot of our roles. So during the pandemic, as I'm sure all of you did, we had a lot of Zoom type quizzes and Christmas parties and summer parties, basically things to keep us connected. So we had drawing activities, we might have done object sharing, we did baking and cooking and all sorts of different things. We also, different volunteers sort of talked and shared information about what they were doing when they were volunteering. And we also started something which was initially called Quarantine newsletter, which I'm sure lots of you, again, will have done during that time. And we were doing it weekly in the first lockdown. That came to do monthly, and now I think since last September we have made this sort of it's roughly quarterly. So it is still very volunteer led. So it's basically we ask our volunteers to give us articles, and as long as they're PC and pleasant and not controversial, we largely don't mind what we put in, but on the whole they tend to be about things that relate to their volunteering more and more, and less about their hobbies and pastimes. But we do think that during that pandemic it really did help to create a sense of community, which we don't really want to lose. And this was some of the feedback about Glamazine or Quarantine, and it was obviously helping some people to actually improve their well-being, and here are some quotes to that effect. So that was why we continued the Glamazine. Going back to our then, come January this year, we thought it is time that we actually do remove some of these people. So on our waiting list, which is the applicant bubble, we had over 1,000 people during the pandemic registered to volunteer, and obviously hadn't been able to volunteer. But we also had a lot of people who were volunteering before, so they would have either been in process or accepted, but were not necessarily volunteering now or wanting to return. We were aware that there were lots of people who felt they couldn't return because they might be shielding, and felt that really, even though, you know, the COVID is supposedly over, that they didn't want to put themselves at risk. So we knew that some people didn't want to return, but from our previous experience from years past has been that there's always quite a lot of people, when we've sent our sort of yearly reply to us if you don't want to be removed emails, people saying, you know, we really want to remain connected, get your emails, but we know we can't really volunteer. And as you know, it's quite unhelpful to have lots of people on your lists that aren't actually available to volunteer. So we thought it might help to encourage people to move off our list if we said there is this other option of having an alumni scheme, particularly because we were aware that lots of people, it wasn't because they didn't want to volunteer, it's just they couldn't volunteer. So that's why we decided to set it up. And essentially all it is another email list. So when people responded this time, if they wanted to join the alumni scheme, they just said so. We still archived them from the account in the normal way. We assume they'd gone because they're not volunteering anymore, but we just put them into a separate email list, and a bit like MailChimp, I suppose. And then when we have and what we said is that you will get invitations to any socials that we're doing for a year. You will also get Glamazine when we put it out there. So because we are continuing with Glamazine, because we felt that it is something that has helped draw our volunteer, lots of disparate people helping in lots of different organisations together as a whole, we're continuing to do Glamazine, but it just means that they get that when we put it out. So one of the difficulties is, I can't tell you how successful it is particularly because we've only just started it, but 32 people did put themselves to go on that list. I have to remember when I send out a Glamazine using Better Impact, or when I'm sending out an invitation to a social, I must send it to the other list as well. So that is a thing that I have to remember to do. And actually it was Rhiannon asking me to do this session that reminded me last week, oh yes, I've got a social next week, which is the one that we've got up here, where we'd invited people to come and hear about a project that's been going on at Museum of Natural History, and we followed that up with tea and cake. Haven't got pictures of the tea and cake, just the boring lecture theatre. But the kinds of things that we have been doing this year are, we had a tea and cake at the Botanic Garden. So that was, luckily that was beautiful weather and about 50 people came to that. And we have had this event that you can see on the screen. And right now, as we are speaking, my colleague Caroline is running another event, which is 2 volunteers wishing to share stuff about their own research that they've been doing. And again, we just said, you can have a room, come, and then anyone can come who's on our whole list and come and get tea and cake, and it's first come, first served. So we have sort of been trying to create some smaller socials rather than having big ones. So in the past, pre-pandemic, used to have one big volunteer party in the summer and one big volunteer party at Christmas time. And this year we've tried to sort of make it be smaller events, but something going on throughout the year. We probably will have a Christmas party. So that is really our alumni scheme in a nutshell.
Wonderful. Thank you, Joy, for sharing that. we've only got a few minutes left to the session, so I think what we'll do is, if anyone's got any questions that they'd like to ask Joy, it would be great to hear those. I'll keep recording for a moment, but it may be that we decide to chop off the Q&A before we go live with the recording. So if anyone does have a question, feel free to pop it in the chat, or you can pop your hand up like Tracy has. Tracy, lovely.
Thank you. Thank you for a great presentation. Really enjoyed that. You said you were going to invite them for socials for a year, and I know it's just started. This, so you're going to have to be really on ball, aren't you, to take people off the socials? And what I was just wondering, do you not think that they should have their own socials straight away, or are you sort of doing it slowly to sort of weaning them off the volunteer list?
Well, I mean, to be honest, I don't think any of them have come to the socials that so far. So I agreed, we've only done about 3 things since I set it up. I think the reason we did it is because I think people sort of psychologically, they know they can't or don't want to volunteer anymore, but they don't want to say goodbye too quickly. So I think it allows them to say, well, I'm not really going just yet. But actually, you know, it gives them that space to move away. As I say, no one has actually responded to any of either the glamazines or the social invitations, though I think that it gives them that psychological space to leave. And I don't know whether that'll be the case, but you know, come the next time we do our data clean, which will be in a year's, well, just under a year's time, I anticipate sending another email out to them saying, thank you very, very much. If you've missed volunteering, come and talk to us. That's not giving any promises, but it's sort of then wiping that mailing list, and then it starts again with the next one. So that's the idea.
Lovely, thank you, Joy. Vanessa, I know you had a question. Perhaps if you could come in and give that a bit of context.
It's a bit of a cheeky ask, actually, Joy, from the perspective of the fact that noticing how many people you had on your applicant list coming through one recruitment portal, what do you do to make sure that you then know which role they're applying for or which area? Because that's a lot to sift otherwise.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can't, as you can see, there's about 4 people applying a day at sometimes. It is nuts. And I think it is a factor of where we are. You know, it's in Oxford, and you know, it's geographically helpful for lots of people. There's a huge migratory influx of people, so that's why lots of people come in, lots of people leave each year. When they come in, they want to try and get involved. So I think we have one of the most migratory populations in the country, so I think it's a bit of a weird place. But how do we do it? Anyone who we treat our applicant group as like a mailing list. So if you've registered, you're registering to hear about new opportunities. You have to tell us what kind of opportunity you're interested in, and that's very broad categories, because we don't want to give expectations that we are definitely going to be able to offer these roles in particular areas. So it's, do you want to work with visitors? Do you want to work behind the scenes? Do you want to work with do you want to work with visitors on a regular basis? Do you want to work with visitors on an ad hoc basis? Do you want to work behind the scenes? And then there's another project called Multaka, which is, do you want to work in intercultural projects? And then when we send out an advert, we send it out to according to their interests, and then people respond just by email. They respond that it might, you know, in that way, and then we sift through. Yeah, it's a lot. We do have to sift through them at that point.